Transportation Licensing Commission, if you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. This is our second meeting with audio amplification. Can everyone hear me? Great, great. We're going to take an item out of order that's on our agenda. We do have a complaint from Morgan Scott Polikoff against Marad Taki, and we're going to take that first. The complainant is going to be making his statement via telephone, and so we're going to dial in and go with that.
Mr. Taki, would you come to the front, please? Let's see if we get what we need here.
Hello?
Mr. Polikoff?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, Dr. Polikoff. My name is Sal Hernandez. I'm the chairperson for the Transportation Licensing Commission here in Nashville. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
We are in the middle of our meeting. We've gotten underway, and so we are now going to be hearing your complaint that you have brought against Marad Taki. We wanted to give you an opportunity to present your complaint. We do have Mr. Taki here today at the hearing. We also have the entire commission here ready to hear your complaint.
Okay.
So you may proceed.
Do you want to swear?
Okay.
Actually, our director has reminded me that we have started a new procedure where we do swear in all complainants and anyone who's testifying for or in defense of a complaint. So if you will please repeat after me, Mr. Polikoff, I would like to put you under oath. I swear or affirm.
I swear or affirm.
That the testimony that I'm about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
That the testimony that I'm about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
All right. Well, thank you. So you may proceed in giving a summary of your complaint.
Sure. So I was visiting I'm from Los Angeles. I was visiting Nashville with my husband. We went out downtown on Broadway on the evening of April 27th. And 2018, and we were at the stage. We left the stage sometime around midnight. I don't know the exact time. And we were going back to our hotel, which was, I believe, the Marriott on close to Vanderbilt's campus. And we didn't have a car or anything. We thought about summoning an Uber, but there were taxis right in front of us. I figured that it was a short ride, so I figured we would just hail a taxi rather than summoning an Uber. So I hailed a taxi. I got into to a minivan, and we asked him to take us to the Marriott Vanderbilt. The driver said that that would be a $30 flat rate fee. I looked at what the taxi cab fares were that were posted on the window, and that, $30 didn't strike me as right, and I wasn't interested in paying $30 because I knew that an Uber wouldn't be $30. So I looked at the fare document on the window and quickly calculated that no, it was not appropriate to charge us a flat rate fee, and I said that no, he should start the meter instead, and he refused to start the meter. Then he told us to get the F out of his cab. So we did, and as I was exiting his cab, I took a picture of his license plate just so that I could have it and use it to make a complaint.
All right. Thank you for presenting your complaint. Do you have anything else to add? I'm going to now give an opportunity for the driver to respond.
No, I do not have anything to add.
All right. You will have an opportunity to present any kind of rebuttal after you hear from Mr. Taki. Mr. Taki?
Okay.
If you'll please come to the podium. And I'll need to swear you in as well, Mr. Taki.
Yes, I'm going to swear what you're talking is right.
I swear or affirm that the testimony
I affirm I'm doing testimony.
that I'm about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
I
truth.
give you truth, whole truth, and the truth.
Thank you. So, would you like to
Yes.
explain?
Yes, he took on 50% right and 50% wrong. At the time, it's Sivinger, not man. That's the man he took it in the phone now, right?
It's Dr. Polikoff?
Yeah, that's man, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not man at the time.
I don't know
It's
if
Sivinger.
If
Sivinger
I'm
at the time.
Be able to hear him, but I can't.
You cannot hear him? Is that
I mean, I can hear that he's speaking, but I can't understand his words.
okay?
At the time, it's Sivinger, not man at the time, sir. You're not with there. The Sivinger at the time. I refused to take in him because it's Sivinger. Maximum my car is 6. I can't take in 7. That's the complaint. And he retaliate to make a complaint about. As at the time, he's 7 people. You can ask him how many people at the time.
So you're saying that he
He's
wanted to have
Sivinger, not
7
man
people?
at the time. Sivinger. Young girl.
Okay. You can proceed. So you're saying 7 people were in the car? 7
No, I can't
passengers?
take in 7 people. I refused to take in. I refused to take in 7 people. And when he asked me how many people, I'm asking him how many people. And where are you going? He said Marriott Vanderbilt. Around 11:30 to 12:30, midnight. How many? He said 5. He get in the cab. I see 7. Hey guys, I'm sorry, how many people? He said, that's okay, 7. No, I can't take in 7. I'm sorry. Get out of the car. If you 6, it's okay, I get it. But 7, I can't take in. I have a lot of ticket for the police. I can take in for one person for $1 extra. Sorry, guys, I can't that. He said, other cab, he taking us from here, it's 7. He take a risk for yourself. It's not for me. I don't care. I taking 10, whatever. But I taking more than 6.
Mr. Taki, did you tell Dr. Polikoff that it was going to be a $30 flat rate?
We don't ask about the money. We never ask about the money. He just get in the cab. How I ask about the money, he know already closed the door. The door is still open. I'm stopped to get in the cab. How I ask the money. There's no reason to ask the money before to get in the cab.
So just so I'm clear, and so Dr. Polikoff can make sure I understand as well what you've said, is you're denying that there was ever any discussion about the amount of the fare?
No, we never did talk to that. We just discussion about how many people first. Well, after this, we start the meter. But usually, extra person for $1. I can't take a sanitation. He costing me more than $300 for one person for $1. And he get mad. And why you taking us? Why kick me out? Because you're not legal, I taking 7. I just 6 maximum. If you 6, we take it. He said other people will get 3 and 1 in front. No, I can't, sir. I'm sorry.
Did you use any profanity with him?
I'm sorry?
Did you use any profanity? Did you curse at him?
No. Or just me upset. Hey, he don't want to get out the car. Say, guys, if you want to stay 6, it's okay. I gotta go. But 7, I can't take it.
So no cursing.
No, we don't see anything. He still he cursing me. He said, "Hey, bad word." He get out. He start take the picture for the car. But it's okay. Take the picture wherever. But
So you did not curse at
no,
any
I
of the
never say
passengers?
anything. I just see, guys, get out, please. I don't want to take in you.
All right, Dr. Pollock, if you can stay right there. But Dr. Polikoff, how many passengers did you have with you the night of this incident?
It was just me and my husband. We were at the stage alone and were returning to our hotel alone.
Okay.
Dr. Polikoff, were there any other people other than yourself and your husband in the vehicle at the time?
No, we were sitting in the 2 captain's chairs it was a minivan, so in that middle row. I can't recall if the door was already closed when we were having the discussion, but there were no other people in the minivan.
So just 2 passengers.
No, 7 passengers.
Yeah.
7 passengers, not 2.
Wait. We're asking him right now.
Okay.
Mr. Taki, at any time around midnight on April 27th, 2018, going into the 28th, did you at all tell any of the passengers who you attempted to pick up that evening that it was going to be a flat rate of $30?
No, I never asked this, sir.
You need to let me finish my question. Did you at all tell any of your passengers that it was going to be a flat rate to take them from one place to another?
Just a flat rate for airport or Opera Land Hotel. That's flat rate. We never ask a flat rate for any around the downtown or something else.
So you have no recollection of an interaction with 2 gentlemen about getting a fare from the stage to the Marriott by Vanderbilt that evening?
No. I remember at the time he complained. I was 7 girl, younger girl. We didn't have men at the time. 7 girl, younger girl.
Well, you've heard Dr. Polikoff. There were no girls. It was just he and his husband.
No.
Dr. Polikoff, you don't by any chance have your husband there today, do you?
Unfortunately, I do not. He's in Salt Lake City at a conference.
And I'm assuming the only pictures that you took is the one in the back that was submitted. No pictures of the inside that could, verify that once you guys got out, the car was empty or the minivan was empty.
That's correct. That's the only picture I took.
Mr. Taki, does Magic Taxi Cab, that's who you drive for?
Yes, I changed it now for voluntary taxi.
Right, but
Yeah,
at that
before-
time it was Magic
Yes,
Taxi
it's
Cab.
Magic Taxi. Yes, 79, I guess. Yes. Yeah,
Would-
that's the picture is right. He
No.
took the picture. That was right.
Wait. Does your taxi cab happen to be one of the taxi cabs that has the cameras in them?
No, I didn't have camera at the time. No,
No.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Polikoff, what motivated you to take the steps of actually going ahead and filing a complaint in this case?
I've never filed a complaint against a taxi cab in my life. In this case, I filed a complaint because I felt that his behavior was wrong. It seemed like he was trying to take advantage of drunk people coming off Broadway and overcharging them, and that, I feel like that's a morally wrong thing to do. And then, probably if he had just asked me to leave the cab without swearing at me, I wouldn't have bothered, but I also didn't appreciate being sworn at. So those are the reasons.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Fields, do we know if, in fact, Mr. Taki is the actual driver, or are we solely relying on the representation of Magic Taxi?
We contacted Magic Taxi, and he was given to, so they said this was the vehicle that he was operating as a sole operator. Then Mr. Taki came in and we talked about it, and he verified that somebody had taken a picture of his vehicle and so forth.
Mr. Taki, were you, in fact, driving Magic Taxi number 79 on April 27th, the evening?
I'm sorry?
Were you actually driving Magic Taxi number 79 on the evening of April 27th?
Yes, I drive the taxi 59 years at the time. Yes, sir.
And I know that you said that you were having trouble hearing over the phone. Are you clear as to what exactly is going on here?
I mean, well, I don't understand your question.
Oh, basically, there's a discrepancy here. He is saying that there were 7 people in the car, several of which were young women, and you're saying that it was you and your husband. So I just want to make sure that you understand exactly what's being said, since you indicated that it was difficult for you to hear over the phone.
Yes, I did understand that.
Okay.
I'm happy to respond. I mean, I think I already responded to that. I said it was just the 2 of us.
Do you remember, Dr.
I have 0 female friends in Nashville. Basically 100% of my friends are other gay men, so I don't get into taxis with women.
Dr. Polikoff, are you able to physically describe the taxi driver to us?
I mean, this was a very long time ago. I mean, it was a male. I can definitely say that. I can say that he had an accent of some kind, and that he did not have white skin. But other than that, I can't say anything else.
All right, Commissioners, do y'all have any other questions for Dr. Polikoff? No. Any questions for Mr. Taki?
No.
All right, well, Dr. Polikoff, thank you. Of course, please stay online. We're going to now deliberate and decide if there's been a sufficient showing for your complaint, and so we can make a ruling.
Okay.
Actually, I do have another question for Mr. Taki.
Yes, sir.
Are you still driving for Magic Cab?
No, I'm changing for voluntary taxi right now.
You left Magic Cab?
Yes, I left like 3 months ago before I go to the for inspection, because I paid to the car for.
Okay, according to the paperwork.
So you're with Volunteer?
Yeah, voluntary now.
He went to volunteer on May the 4th, was the date that we have record of him switching companies.
All right.
And what did you say the reason for the switch was?
The reason for switch, because before he charged me $100, $60 a week, and the other other company, and already my car is scratched. He need paint. I paint. I go to cheap company.
Okay, we're just trying to make sure the
Yeah.
transfer wasn't.
And the
because
voluntary taxi
of this-
charging me cheaper a monthly because I don't go to airport. I do my family for 8-day time. I just work a few hours at night time.
Okay.
So, Mr. Taki, I do have just another question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just, I do want to remind you, you're under oath. So you deny that there ever was an episode where 2 gentlemen attempted to get in your cab, asked you to drive them to the Marriott by ever telling them, okay, it'll be a $30 flat rate?
I swear God, it's 7 girl. It's not 2 men first. I'm just correct something. There's 7 younger girl.
Okay, we're not
Yep.
talking about that incident. This not involve 7 girls.
Okay.
We're
I
not
don't ask
talking
about
about
the
that
money.
incident.
I never ask about the rate before you get in the cab because already we discussion. He went. The door is open. He started getting the cab. First question: how many people? He said 5. I get in the cab. I see 7 here. Guys,
I'm asking about Dr. Polikoff and his husband, because his testimony is that it was only he and his husband attempting to get a ride from the stage to the Marriott at Vanderbilt. So do you have any recollection of that at all?
I don't have any correction. I don't have any document for that.
Can I ask one question? On the 7 people that you're describing, what are you saying there were 2 men and 5 women?
No, all is girl.
So you okay, so you again you have no recollection of
No man.
Okay.
He's talking about 7 girls.
I remember at the time because we started discussion more than 1 minute.
So you
That's
have,
what I described very good that.
so your testimony, Mr. Taki, is that you just have no memory of these 2 gentlemen trying to get into your cab and you telling them it's going to be a $30 flat rate.
Never. The reason in, if you tell him, if you close the door, how I tell him the money before you get in the car? That's already start getting in the car. We
Well,
see 7 people. Last one is 7 is starting getting in the cab.
His testimony wasn't that he asked. His testimony was that you told
He
him.
don't ask because he know the taxi cab you have a meter. He didn't ask about the money. He asked me, can you get us from Marriott? I say, sure. How many people? He see 5. He see 5. Remember me. I get in the cab.
Mr. Taki, you're confusing another instance which is not before us today. Apparently, that evening, you must have picked up or almost picked up what you thought were going to be 5 girls, taking them somewhere, and then you realized there were 7 passengers, and you told them one of them needs to get out. Correct? Correct?
I remember because
Okay.
already 6 in the car, and the other one is starting the door.
Right. That entire incident has nothing to do with Dr. Polikoff's complaint today. He's complaining and bringing a complaint specifically against you that you demanded a $30 flat fee to take him and his husband from the stage to the Marriott at Vanderbilt.
No, we don't thinking about the money. Because he didn't ask me to give him the price.
So you do remember picking up Dr. Polikoff and his husband?
I don't remember the name, who guy. I remember at the time complain about 7 girl. At the time.
Okay,
I never
again,
complained.
that's a different incident than what Dr. Polikoff is talking about. Dr. Polikoff is talking about attempting to catch a taxi cab from the stage to the Marriott at Vanderbilt for 2 people, 2 men, no women.
No. Nobody asked me about the Mariam, just 7 girl. That's what I remember. We repeated again 7 girl. Never I go to Marriott at the time. I remember the date. I never go to Marriott this the time. That's what I remember the complaint very good. This 7 girl. He was asking me what he can get us from the Marriott. I get sure. I get the people get in the car. I see 7, 6 inside, and other one is still in the door. He don't get in yet. Start discussion 1 minute. Guys, I'm sorry I can't take it. I taken 7 other guys. They take another cab. Do whatever.
Have you ever demanded a $30 flat fee on
Yes,
on
I
the
do.
weekends?
I do when I go to airport or when I go to Gaylord. If you 6 people, sometimes you ask me how many people. It's 25 plus $5 extra passenger. It's $30. Usually, sometimes we do. Somebody, but before you, if you somebody ask.
Well, Mr. Taki, you can see how it is highly unusual that a passenger would file a complaint against a taxi driver with such detail, and that you, as the driver, have zero recollection of the incident, and in fact have repeatedly referenced an entirely separate incident having nothing to do with the complainant's complaint. Do you understand how unusual that is? Are there any other questions for either Dr. Polikoff or Mr. Taki?
Dr. Polikoff, it sounds like it's lunchtime in California now.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Snack.
I understand. Yeah. That's the
Thanks
only
for
question I
spending your
have.
lunch hour with us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what we have before us is a complaint by a consumer. Dr. Polikoff has presented a compelling complaint here. It is supported by his testimony as well as a photograph of the actual taxi cab. And we also have testimony from the driver himself, who's testified that he has zero recollection of this incident. He also has testified that he has never demanded a flat rate from a passenger unless they were going to the airport or to Gaylord. So we're presented with the unfortunate incidents where we're having to decide if one witness is more credible than the other, or if, and based on the entirety of the evidence before us, whether or not Dr. Polikoff has met a sufficient burden to prevail on his complaint. So we need to make that kind of decision here, and whether or not there was
Is it possible that both Mr. Polikoff and Mr. Taki are truthful, and that we only have information about the cab and not the driver?
It's possible that the taxi company was incorrect and gave us the wrong driver.
And even given the confusion and language barrier with Mr. Taki, they both appear relatively truthful in discussing the matter, and we don't. All we have is a picture of the cab. Unfortunately, we don't have a picture of the driver or the driver's card while you're in the cab where that's visible. So I don't know if we can do anything.
Frankly, myself, I credit Dr. Polikoff's account of the incident, and am pleased that he was willing to go through the process of filing a complaint and being on the phone with us this afternoon. I completely discredit Mr. Taki. I don't know if he's intentionally not remembering it and using that as a shield, or whether he really just doesn't remember the incident because it wasn't that big a deal to him, but it was to his passenger. So I take a different view. I think this incident did happen. I think it happened with his cab. I think he was the only driver of that cab that night, and that he's either hiding behind his lack of recollection or trying to convince us that there was a different story of 7 women. Whatever it is, I just don't credit Mr. Taki at all on this matter. So.
I'm at a loss. I'm kind of siding with you. I mean, it's just a very bizarre situation for there to be two stories that almost have nothing to do with each other.
May I ask for one clarification from Mr. Taki?
Yes.
Mr. Taki, do you ever rent your taxi cab out to anyone else, or are you the only driver of that particular cab?
Yes, nobody drives.
Nobody drives it but
no,
you?
No, I drive for myself.
Good point, Mr. Fields. Thank you.
And you always drive number, what is that, 79?
Before, yes, we drive 79.
Always.
Yes, no, we don't have another driver. This is my car. I use
It's your car.
I use
Okay.
I use the personal.
It's not a driver.
I think
His
just,
cab,
just
yes.
for clarification, is Mr. To Mr. Taki? Oh, okay. In historically, taxi cabs used to be a 24-hour operation in terms of a vehicle might actually be owned by one person and leased out by two additional people, where they would run 3 8-hour shifts or 2 12-hour shifts. Typically now cab drivers own their vehicles, and it's their personal car too, because we've had some issues of when we've cited them when they weren't actually taxi cabs, so we had to back a citation out. So that's what I think Mr. Taki's saying. It's his cab. And again,
Okay.
I wasn't there, so whether, I can't speak to that one way or the other. I can just say that it's his cab, and I was concerned about if somebody else, because again, he could have leased it out, and that's the reason I was asking that question.
I guess I'm a little bit in the middle here in that I don't think Mr. Taki is hiding the incident as a shield. I don't have any doubt that taxi cab number 79 is his, and that the passenger did take actual photo of that taxi cab. I just don't think within his business, and as busy as he was that night, or as many passengers as he takes in, that he does recall it, because it wasn't that important to him. It was just another fare that he moved on from. I do not discredit Dr. Is it Polikoff?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. He was a visitor to our city. I mean, to take the time from California to make this complaint, to answer this call, I do not think he would go to that extent to falsify any type of account of what happened. I just don't think Mr. Taki, it was that important to him. So I don't think he's lying when he says he doesn't remember. It just wasn't that important to him.
Does that mean, Mr. Carr, that you
I do believe the incident happened.
That's what I was about to ask.
Given the information that the taxi's only operated by Mr. Taki, changes my initial view that it wasn't another driver, or potentially another driver leased out by the taxi company. Cheers.
Well, it sounds like we've got at least three commissioners that are in favor of finding that Dr. Polikoff's complaint is prevailing. Does anyone want to make a motion?
What this question is for legal. What actually are our alternatives as far as how to judge on this?
So, y'all talked a little bit about the burden of proof in this context. Do I need to sit next to a microphone?
If you would, please.
Yeah. Y'all talked a little bit about the burden of proof in this situation. In a administrative hearing, the standard is a little bit different. It's not like a preponderance of evidence in a court case. Your standard is the standard with which your decision would be reviewed on appeal. And that is, it's more than a scintilla of evidence, and your decision cannot be arbitrary and capricious. So I don't know if that helps answer the question.
What would be the specific violation on this matter?
I need to go back to my book.
Okay.
And I guess that's
Billy, do you
more
have the
what I was
provisions?
asking. Thank you.
Billy's looking. Hang on.
It says here meter
Oh,
violation.
you mean your alternatives in terms of discipline?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be probation, suspension, and revocation?
Correct.
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Well, I'll make a motion just to get us moving along here that Mr. Taki has committed a meter violation and abusive treatment towards a potential passenger, and reserve a decision on the punishment if the motion regarding the violation and the complaint passes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Ms. Fields, any previous complaints against Mr. Taki?
We have not.
And he's been a driver since 2017?
I was going to say, I think it's 2016. He's a relatively new driver.
All right. I make a motion that he be placed on probation for 90 days.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Dr. Polikoff, again, thank you for bringing this complaint before us today.
Sure thing.
All right. If you have any questions about the proceeding, Dr. Polikoff, you can certainly contact Mr. Fields' office. I know you have that number. But again, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I'm going to be hanging up now.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Mr. Fields, I believe I've hung up, but I'm not 100% positive.
Okay. Mr. Taki, the hearing's concluded. They've placed you on a 90-day probation. So you're going to be eligible to come back in and renew your permit.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Mr. Fields has circulated before today last month's meeting minutes that we had in August. Has the commission had an opportunity to review those minutes?
We have.
Is there a motion regarding approval?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. KCI is here to present on their slow-moving vehicle study. It's really a kind of a supplemental presentation from what I understand. Mr. Fields?
You'll recall that earlier this year we'd requested that KCI study the slow-moving vehicles of the city. You'll also recall that sometime last year, the year before, we'd had a previous study. It wasn't as comprehensive as we. It did not complete everything we wanted. We asked for some additional information, so this is the product that's now studied all of the slow-moving vehicles that is under the purview of the commission. And they came back, made a presentation in May, and one of the things that you asked was some additional information to speak and engage the companies and have conversation with companies. And I think that Preston will be able to do all that now.
Hopefully I'll be able to manipulate the presentation from here. We'll see if the slides change. As Billy mentioned, I'm Preston Elliott with KCI Technologies. We did an initial study for you all back in 2016, and that study primarily looked at the slow-moving vehicles. And in that category of slow-moving vehicles, we're referring to the low-speed vehicles, the pedicabs, the pedal carriages, as well as the horse carriages. So the second study began in 2017, and it was among issues of continued growth and development in the downtown in terms of traffic, also growing concerns of the mix of types of vehicles in the downtown. And then we were asked to kind of look at the regulations as it related to that. So that study concluded, as Billy mentioned, back early 2018, and we did a presentation to you all. I think it was back in February, and there was a request to at that time, we primarily based it exclusively on data. And so there was a request of us to go back and talk to the companies. And so we did do that. We held discussions with all the companies in May, and appreciate them taking their time. We were able to successfully meet with either all of them collectively by company type, or via phone or individually, and we really appreciate their time. Very insightful information, and so what I'll be sharing with you is an update of the information from that engagement. And again, some suggested changes that potentially could relate. And if you recall, the initial study had recommendations in terms of options. Again, this is very, very similar in terms of options, just taking into consideration a whole host of variables, including the company input. So, as you know, there are you currently have the 4 types of operations under the slow-moving vehicle category. There are 5 in the horse carriage permitted companies with 17 vehicles permitted, and in low-speed vehicles, 4 companies, 56 vehicles. The pedal carriages at 3 and 19, and then the pedicabs at 2 companies and 23. I point this out just as you know, you have the ability, as you know, to regulate these particular operations by either the company, the driver, route or zone, and also by time. The study that was done in 2016 actually resulted as a time component that you all place as it related to during peak hours. So just to kind of recap, I know it's a little small and I apologize for that. Just to recap, we had a series of recommendations for the horse-drawn carriages. Probably the primary one that came out of that was a stand location change from 2nd Avenue to either Broadway or First. The stand has been moved to Broadway. And also in that series of recommendations were consideration of limiting the number of carriages per stand or on the street at one time, consideration of employing maybe some type of management of the stand itself, and then some revisions to routes or some additional route options, and then with maintaining the current number, so no increase. And that's going to remain consistent through all the recommendations here. On the low-speed vehicles, we presented some options, and one option was essentially restricting them to designated routes or reaffirming the roadways that they could use. Also, along that lines, there was prohibit restrictions on traffic flow in terms of where they board and get on or off, enforcement of parking, passenger loading versus freight loading, and that's a universal issue that's out within the downtown. I think you're very aware of issues in dealing with things of excessive noise provisions, also compliance with equipment requirements, alcohol enforcement, and then again maintaining the 56 vehicles. I will say, as I talk about the low-speed vehicles on the recommendation, the one in terms of the companies, you're going to see here as I share with you a lot of the input as it relates to the limitations of attempting to do designated routes. And then on the pedal carriages, this one had the motor assist capability recommendation. Also, similar to the low-speed vehicles, was potentially limiting them to restricted routes, and then issues of enforcement of noise. And then the pedicabs were basically a motor assist capabilities. No real issues here, but to kind of keep consistency with all the slow-moving vehicles in terms of noise restrictions and alcohol provisions, and then again maintaining the current number. So let me get into the meetings with the companies. Again, they were all really great to talk with and provided very insightful information. So what I have here is basically we were, they shared a little bit of their operations, and the trips are very spontaneous, require high visibility. So people are making them, they're either families or couples that may come out of a show or be walking down and see the horses and then want to take a ride. So that was something that was shared with us, and you'll see why that's important as we talk about the other modes of slow-moving vehicles. They talked about the new stand location, and something that we don't necessarily think about as we're talking about traffic is the issue of sun and the location of that particular. There's really no shade for their horses. So when we were looking at the stand locations, we're looking at it from an operational perspective, stacking area, and so forth. And then they shared with us a growing concern of just continued confliction with other modes and pedestrians, a lot of issues around loud noise and rooftop bars. And so these were the insightful information that we received from the companies as it related to the horse carriages. With that being said, sorry, it looks like some of this is getting cut off in the end there. But with that being said, we did identify a potential either second location or new location for a stand, which could be off of 4th Avenue next to the Hilton. It is a location that has high visibility, so it would meet that test in terms of visibility from people coming out of shows or walking in the particular area. It does offer shade a large portion of the day. If you go on Google Earth and you look at this location, you'll see the shadow of the building, so it pretty much shows you that. It's about 6 metered parking spaces currently, so that would be a particular issue with that. Regardless of stand location, we do think that there might be some employing of some sort of delineation or painting so that it's more clear that these spots or locations are for horse carriages. There was a suggestion, and it is an example of in front of Hard Rock in terms of the taxi stands. There continues to be kind of conflicts between that as a shared location. In consideration of expanding the peak hour restriction, currently it's from 4 to 6 p.m. As we're seeing, and I think anyone in the downtown is seeing, that peak hour in the evening is starting to get into the 3 o'clock. And so it's really spreading. The other aspect is consider a 10 p.m. Restriction on Broadway between 2nd and 5th Avenue. And that you could the issue there is that that's probably the heart of the vast majority of rooftop bars and the loud noise. Again, primarily most of their customers are families or couples. If you keep them out of that particular zone, it probably would reduce the amount of conflict that exists there. Again, these are potential recommendations that could be considered or further explored. Now, on the low-speed vehicles, again, we were happy to meet with all of the companies. And on the low-speed vehicles, one thing that was pointed out, and which we knew, but is that they provide not only a lot of tour-type trips, but they also provide a lot of point-to-point transportation. So those short trips that individuals might want to make either from a hotel to a few blocks down, or possibly even employees that work in the downtown wanting to get back to their car. So point-to-point was mentioned to us. They expressed a lot of concern about the challenges in terms of having routes be limited to certain streets, given the fact there's so much construction and development in the downtown that roadways get often closed daily or even hourly. So that would be very challenging. They also indicated a few destinations that are a little bit challenging for them to serve. For example, 12 South, they actually stopped just before because the low-speed service area ends just before you get into, I have a map if you want to see, but just before you get into the 12 South area. And then also Topgolf similarly. So they'd have to drop the clientele off and they'd have to walk the additional distance. I can show you a little graphic here if you'd like to see. Also, they expressed an issue with being able to serve Nissan Stadium. KVB, the bridge portion, when you're going back into the downtown, is actually posted at 40 miles an hour, which is they're not allowed to utilize a road that's greater than 35 miles an hour. So, and that's a federal law, a state law as well. So, in order to make that trip through there, you'd have to reduce the speed. And then we do think that, and I really apologize that it's cutting off at the bottom, but a 4 to 6 time period restriction, except for point-to-point transportation, so not during no tour types during those time periods, but more of the point-to-point trips. That may require potentially even designating corridors that are major commuting corridors so that stay off of them. So on that note, hopefully my clicker is going to work here. So we do think that allowing the point-to-point during peak hours is fine, just not to be on specific routes. Sorry. These top three kind of go together in a sense of expanding the time period from 3 to 6. Again, this would only be for tour-based type trips, not point-to-point trips, and limiting them to routes, except for the major commuting corridors. So, example would be not be using Broadway beyond 5th Avenue. Again, I mentioned the no tours. Service area changes, we do think that it'd probably be advisable to look at extending the limits to better serve 12 South. There's a church that has a pay lot that's right in the corner that would allow them to turn around, and then also drop off patrons safely. And then also the Top Golf location as well. I think that you've probably become more and more familiar with the ability of geofencing and the ability to use GPS and data to understand the movements of various modes. And so this is something we think that could be used with the low-speed vehicles as well. We would not recommend limiting them to the original recommendations on routes. Largely, the study was to show that it could be done if you wanted to limit them. Given their operations and the point-to-point transportation, it probably, and the amount of road closures, it probably would not be advisable. We do also think that reducing the speed limit on KVB does make sense. Once you get over the bridge, it goes to 30. So once you're into the downtown, so when you're coming over the bridge, it's 40 miles an hour. Reducing it to 35 would allow them to utilize that loop and not put them in any particular violation. All right, I will need you to hit the down arrow. Thank you. Okay, so the pedal carriages, their trips are scheduled months and months in advance. So as I mentioned to you about the horse carriages, those are really more spontaneous. These trips here are scheduled in advance, rain or shine. I saw them on the way here. They're out there enjoying themselves, getting wet, but they're out there. They check, based on company input, they check routes daily. To make sure, because they don't want to have their clients have a bad experience when they're in Nashville, so that they're checking routes. Limiting it, again, similar to the low-speed vehicles, will be a challenge. And they did express some willingness to consider motor assist, and they as well don't like the time restriction in terms of peak hours, but they also understand. And I think the low-speed vehicle companies as well. So if I didn't mention that, that's true. All right, one more time on the arrow. Okay, thank you. Possibly, yes. Down arrow. I hope it didn't freeze. Thank you. So again, we would propose not limiting them to the routes that were in the study. Again, it showed that you have that ability. You could do it. We do think that extending the time restriction from 3 to 6 is, given the amount of congestion that's occurring in the downtown. Again, this would be, we'd have to go through and identify the major commuting routes, but we're not saying don't let them operate specifically during those time periods, but there are routes and they know which ones to avoid because of the congestion. We just think that it may be more appropriate to link the two together in terms of those commuting routes in that time period. This one is a challenge for us because from a traffic perspective, I mean, as you know, lots of roadways in the downtown are very congested, and when you get into events, it even makes it more challenging. And what we've discovered here is we think is the real issue is more of a land use transportation, more of a land use implication than it is for an operational aspect. And so we do think potentially implementing some type of quiet zones on 2nd Avenue between KVB and the pedestrian bridge, 3rd Avenue and the pedestrian bridge, KVB, sorry, and then this is examples, but as you know, it's a different kind of land use in that particular component, and it's also an area that they operate in. They did mention that they attempt to self-regulate in terms of cutting down music, but this may be an area that could be helpful in terms of reducing that conflict there. Again, geofencing is another opportunity. There's a whole host of things that you could really get into if you did utilize those aspects of it. Because you literally are getting real-time information. Okay, I think one or two more times on that click there, unless did it go? I think I might have. Okay, I think I got it. It's back. Thank you. So the last company that we has to do with the pedal cabs, and they indicated they were fine with the motor assist recommendation. They said that they avoid congested routes, and they did wish that they had the ability to utilize the bike lanes. The current rule does not allow them to do that. We didn't have any specific additional recommendations as it related to the pedicabs. I think that concludes the presentations that I have. I did have some diagrams that if you were interested in seeing those or any questions about it, but for the most part, that's the presentation. That's the 4th Avenue location. This is referring to the horse carriages in terms of kind of that zone I mentioned. And then these are the areas on the low-speed vehicles. So the far left one would be kind of how it would go down to the church parking lot, and then the Top Golf in the middle, and then the KVB, the bridge. That's the segment where the 40 miles an hour is. And I think that's it. Other than I think just the quiet zone type aspect.
Any questions?
Do you have any information on how reducing the speed on KVB would impact traffic? Or
Yeah, as you know, it's a pretty big road. I mean, the bridge is the portion we're referring to largely. Coming into the downtown, obviously, you could look at the speeds in different directions. I mean, you could maintain the speed out at the 40 and allow the 35 coming into, because your transition, once you get over the bridge, you're at 30. So that would allow them to do the loop if you elected to do that in terms of directional. In terms of speed differentiation, I mean, a 5 mile an hour speed differentiation on a, 4 or 5 lane 6. Yeah, yeah.
And on the, sorry.
no, go ahead.
On the other side, it's also basically you're going from 30 to 40 to 30.
Correct.
And
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
right, because East Nashville is going to be 30.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
this
So once you get past the interstate, yes.
Okay.
And of course, those are issues, traffic and parking. The Traffic Parking Commission would actually deal with that, but
Yeah.
you would have the ability to make recommendations as it affects what we do.
And then on 12 South, the church parking lot's on the north end, right?
It is on the of 12 South.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it's just before you taper down to the two lane portion.
Okay.
Lawrence,
saying-
Lawrence is just. I think it's just. I think. I could go back. Thank you. I wish I would have got a little bigger. So I want to walk up to the screen.
Because that church parking lot goes away eventually, right? Isn't there-
Currently it's a pay lot.
Yeah.
You're saying in the future, or
Yeah.
yeah. So this is from the downtown, coming down, and so right now they stop here, which is about where the 4 or 5 lanes.
Yeah.
There's a median in the middle, but that's a lot there that's currently a
So
paved.
why wouldn't we just go down to Kirkwood or something? And I'm just curious if if people want to go to 12 South.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion from the companies. I mean, they were happy with that particular location,
Yeah.
and we weren't trying to be overly expansive. I mean, there are potentially other locations that you could look at as well, if you were interested in exploring that as well.
Yeah.
These were 2 locations mentioned.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, we just saw it as a nice small portion to move down into where there was an opportunity to turn around, pick
Yeah.
up and drop off safely.
Can I make a comment? I'm down in 12 South a lot. I like Urban Grub. That road does become very narrow after that median, right around where Jenny's ice cream is. It becomes and it is very congested. A lot of foot traffic. The cars that there are valets running back and forth across the street. There is a flower, pumpkin shop, whatever. There's a lot of pedestrian traffic coming off the sidewalks and out of the buildings, and it is a very slow moving process. 5 miles an hour maybe for cars in there that makes it even more congestive to add the carts in there.
Sounds like downtown.
It does, which we don't,
We can't put them on 12 South.
we've got gum on one shoe. We don't want to put it on the other.
I don't know about that.
All right, well, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your presentation.
Well, after we digest this, will we have a chance to ask questions at like the next meeting?
It'd be up to the commission. One of the things that we'll do is we will provide copies of the study to the commission itself, because again, I don't have a copy of it till he gives it to me. And then we'll also put it on the website. If the commission would like to have a conversation about it, we can certainly put it on the agenda, and whether it's the October meeting, which may be full, or the November meeting, but still, we can certainly do that. It's up to the commission. And no actions required on the presentation today.
All right, well, we will then move on to our next item on the agenda. It's under taxi cabs. We've been asked to review requests by 10 Cab to add Abdir Razak Bahali as an additional executive officer.
Every year, this particular company has an election of its board, and they had one member leave, and Mr. Bahali was added in order to comply with the ordinance. Any change to the face of the application has to be approved by the commission. It's in order, and it's the same thing you've done several times before.
My apologies, Chair. I think I need to leave at this point. We do have a sufficient quorum. Okay.
All right, well, I make a motion.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr.
Motion
Turner.
to approve Mr. Bahali as the executive officer.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We also have a driver application for John Beasley for taxi permit.
In making his application, Mr. Beasley's at the podium, and making his application, he failed to list two things, one in 2006, which was a DUI, and the 2007 was a reckless endangerment. We had conversations with Mr. Beasley, and he indicated that he neglected, he did not intentionally leave it off, it was an accident. So he needs to appear in front of the commission.
Mr. Beasley, it seems like you have DUI as recently as 2014. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. It's been about a little more than 5.5 years ago.
And you just forgot about the other incidents?
They asked me to get 2 years driver record, and with 5 years, and then they got 10 years, and then they went back and got 30 years. And then not only did we have copies of all these things, then I had to write them all down. And I didn't know I was supposed to go back 30 years, because I certainly couldn't remember. So I didn't mean to be dishonest about anything. It was difficult to me to have them there, and then, exactly how do you write it? Is speeding, or it have initials, and then you have to write it all. Seems like it would have been easier just to read it off the thing, but then I didn't know which cab company I was going to be. Initially, I put with Yellow Cab, because I have driven a Yellow Cab in Denver, Colorado, and actually drove a Checker cab here for a very short time back in the 80s. But I drove Yellow Cab in Denver back in the 70s. I went to graduate school, University of Colorado, and during the winter months, I could make really good money driving a cab. So, just want to be a cab driver. Confused about exactly how to write all this stuff down. See, I bought this car wanting to be an Uber driver, but Uber driver, if you've had a DUI, you had to wait 7 years. And I was thinking it was 5 years, so a year and a half from now, I'd be able to be an Uber driver.
Is your license valid?
I beg your pardon?
Is your license valid at this time?
Yeah, my license is valid.
In 2007, you also were found guilty of violation of implied consent law, correct?
Of what?
Violation of implied consent, failure to take the breath test. That's what it shows on your TBI
Yeah,
report.
in 2007?
Yes.
Yeah, that was, right, I had played bridge with this group, and
I don't need details. I just wanted,
yeah,
on the record here, you also had another offense that wasn't listed, and that was violation of implied consent in 2007. That's in your TBI report.
yeah, yes, sir, I was,
It says guilty as charged, $466 fine. Of course, your license then is suspended for 1 year for that.
I think it was 6 months. It was suspended for 6 months, I think. But, yeah, I was told by somebody not to take the test.
All right. You didn't list that as well on your application, did you?
Apparently not.
And you also at the same time were charged with violation of open container law. That was dismissed, I know, but you were charged with violation of open container law.
If that's what it says, I'm sure it's right. I just can't remember all this.
Okay. Is that why you didn't put it on the application? Because you didn't remember it?
If it was on there, I copied it all.
And while I heard you say that you didn't realize you had to go back 30 years, these 4 different things from 2006 to 2007 are still within what, 12, 11 years of today?
Yes, sir. As I said, I went and got 10 years. I paid to get 10-year records, and
Okay.
then they later gave me 30 years. And I joined the Marine Corps when I was 19. Was there for 6 years. And
So when you filled out your application, did you have the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's records?
I didn't have them for 30 years. I had them for 10 years.
10 years, okay. And that's what you used to fill out your application?
Right. Then later they gave me 30 years.
All right. And did you update your application then when you got the 30
No,
years?
sir. I don't. I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Who's hiring you to drive a cab?
I was hoping to. I initially signed up with Yellow Cab, and then I thought, well, maybe I should go with Music City Cab Company because they have Checker and they have a pink cab and one other one.
Do you have employment, an offer of employment right now if you get a permit?
I don't understand.
Do you have a cab company offering you a job right now if you get a permit?
I went initially to Yellow, and the only reason I thought, well, maybe I go with Checker because the elect lighter.
I hear all that. Do you or do you not have someone willing to employ you today if
Yeah.
you get a permit?
Yeah,
Who?
yeah. I went down to check Yellow Cab Company,
Okay.
and they said if I get out, yeah. And then I called, they said they couldn't send anybody down here. They said they were so, well, that was the one at Music City Cab Company. But I think both of them, they said they were so busy they would have a hard time sending that person down here to talk, but they could call on the phone. But I can go back and talk to Yellow Cab and see.
We would only issue the permit once we have verification from the companies.
Okay.
So if you choose to approve him, then he will only be issued the permit when we have evidence that a company will hire him. It appears that Yellow is ready to hire him. Then he also has made contact that Yellow, based on conversations, Yellow is prepared to hire him if he is approved. But he also said he may want to, before he go to the other company and see what the opportunities are there.
No, I can just go to Yellow. I'll just stick with Yellow.
It looks like you also had a recent traffic ticket in August 2017
In Belmead.
in Belmead.
Right.
You said you were going 65 in a 40-mile-an-hour zone. Is that on Highway 70 right there in Belmead?
That's right. Right as you go down before you go to the Belmead Courthouse, I have a friend that was the best man in my wedding and godfather of my son. He lives in Belmead, and he's got a Mercedes that I was driving, and I went to pass someone. At that time I had a Mercury Grand Marquis, and when you step on it, it would just sort of go around the car. Well, his car just took off like a rocket. I wasn't. I had no idea I was going to be going. It just took off, and then I was going right by the Belmead Courthouse before I would get to the boulevard, and that's how I wasn't used to this Mercedes. It was a very fast car.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Beasley. We'll go ahead and decide what we're going to do here.
Okay.
It is a little unusual that we have an applicant who's got 2 DUIs and 1 failure to give consent come before us. I know 2 of these are from 2007. The more recent one is 2014. There are also a number of other traffic violations.
The one in Alabama, I went to a funeral down there, and what I was told down there, if you had out-of-state tags, they'd pull. I was just following the traffic. If you had out-of-state tags, they'd pull you over. If you had Alabama tags, they wouldn't. That's what I was told. I went down there and.
I think he's specifically talking about the DUIs and not necessarily the speeding.
Right. Okay. Well, I remember there was one thing I had to go down into Alabama.
Mr. Fields, are we allowed to add a condition to the granting of his permit? I know one of the conditions is he has to be hired by a taxi cab company, but upon hiring of that taxi cab company, can we make a condition of if he gets another DUI, or even for him to be checked for alcohol consumption?
The commission historically has taken action along those lines, where you would give a permit, you would issue the permit, You could restrict them to the company that you choose. For instance, in this case, if it's yellow, it's yellow. And then you could then order random drug and alcohol testing for whatever period you choose. And typically what we do is put it upon the company then to be responsible for doing the testing. Then they report back if there's any violations of that. If he were to be convicted, he would no longer be eligible. So if something were to happen and he had a conviction, you could also, again, I think, restrict... No, you could restrict along those lines, and you've done that in the past.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve with the restrictions in place that if Yellow Cab is willing to hire him, that he'd be hired with the implication that he would have a random alcohol and drug screening, just given the amount of DUIs that are appearing on your record and violations involving alcohol.
The only time I drink beer is when I play golf.
You must play a lot of golf.
Playing golf in the car.
Well, Mr. Beasley,
And I drank, in fact, dinner, I have a couple of glasses of Merlot wine.
Right.
That's all. I don't drink any vodka.
Right, I understand.
Did you have a time for that? In other words, the drug test for a period of 6 months? Or, in other words, like you want monthly testing, or in other words, or just a test in a
I'd say for a period of 6 months.
I'd be glad to take any test. I would, and the open container was someone else. Someone else was riding in the car with me.
Mr. Beasley, do you still drink today then, currently?
I drink beer when I play golf.
Well, do you understand that if you drink beer and then have a drug test the following day, you're going to come back positive for alcohol in your system?
Well, I won't be playing much golf.
But you're going to be subject to random drug and alcohol screening, so you won't know when you're going to be tested. And if you fail, then the company that you're working for is obligated to report to Mr. Fields that you failed your drug and alcohol screen.
I can go on the wagon. I go to AA meetings if I need to.
We just want to make sure that you're not drinking and driving. That's our only intention. On your spare time, if you're not driving and you want to have a beer and somebody else takes you to the golf
I was driving a taxi cab, I wouldn't have time to play golf, and I wouldn't drink.
Well, we don't want to restrict your extracurricular activities. We just don't want you to do it while you're in the taxi cab.
Well, then when I get home at night, could I drink a glass of
That's
Merlot
totally
wine?
up to you. I'm not directing you in that.
Right.
So my motion is for approval with a 6 months random drug and alcohol screening.
Sounds good to me.
I'm not hearing a second.
I'll second. I second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Congratulations, Mr. Beasley. You're going to be granted a permit, but you're subject to random drug and alcohol screening.
Okay.
It's very important that you understand that if you drink at all recreationally, you could still be subject to a drug and alcohol test, and if you fail, you will lose your permit to drive a taxi cab immediately.
Right. Then so, how long would it? How long would it be in my system?
I don't know.
Usually it's 20.
We'll direct you to someone to speak with about
Okay.
that.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll see you at class next Wednesday.
Okay. You tell me where it was. Thank you so much.
Mr. Fields, I want to make sure procedurally that I'm following Robert's rules appropriately, but with respect to Mr. Beasley's application, I know we had a motion from Mr. Carr there. If I had gotten a vote, I would have said no. And then we had a second. Is there a mechanism as the chair that I can ask for there to be continued deliberation even though there's a motion pending with a second?
The chair can vote to make or break a tie.
It wasn't a tie. It was a 2 to 1.
Make a tie. So if it's 2 to 1 and you would vote with the 1, then you can vote to make a tie, which means the motion fails.
Well, Ms. Costonas, I would like to make a tie, if that's possible.
Sort of retroactively.
Yes.
I mean, are the other commissioners okay with that?
Yeah, I am.
Yes, he has a vote.
And that means that the motion fails. So basically, you're asking for a reconsideration of the recent vote, and so that you would have the opportunity to cast your vote, and your vote would then be nay.
Yes.
If
All right,
no one
well,
objects to that procedure, then I think we might want to go ahead and have the vote again, just so it's clear if this gentleman chooses to appeal from that result, because that will be effectively a failure to grant him a permit.
All right, Mr. Beasley, if you come back before us, because I do want to make sure you understand what I'm proposing to do here. We just had a vote approving your application, but I'd asked for some legal advice from our counsel here on the procedure when, as chair, typically I don't vote unless there is an actual tie between the commissioners. And in this instance, I wanted to vote, not realizing that I could. And I'm asking the commission to reconsider now the granting of your application, so we can then vote again based on Mr. Carr's motion so that I may cast my vote.
And I recant my second. I'm going to change my vote or recant my second.
Why don't we come to the next vote?
Can I make a suggestion? How about if I make a motion to reconsider
Yes.
Mr. Beasley's application at this time?
I
And
think
just
that-
open
that
it
would
back
be
up to a
better.
clean slate at this point. And if you want to make your motion. All right, so I make a motion to reconsider Mr. John Beasley's application for permit to drive.
I second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I make a motion to grant Mr. Beasley a permit under the condition that he is subject to a random alcohol and drug screening for a period of 6 months upon being hired by Yellow Cab.
Is there a second? Hearing no second, the motion fails.
When can Mr. Beasley, if he chooses, reapply, Mr. Fields?
If you deny his application, he cannot reapply for 90 days. If the commission takes no action on the application, I think the ordinance is silent on that. So there's no provision that it would become approved by no, in other words, no action means it just sits there. So the application would have no action, it would sit in a folder, and if the commission said we want to examine it again in a month or 6 months or 2 months or say nothing, it would sit there. I'm not sure what would trigger. I assume we'll probably have to do some research to figure out what he could do to trigger it.
Well, all I'm interested in is, Mr. Beasley, if you'd like to reapply, if you do, I would make a suggestion that you show up here with some proof that you have a better understanding of alcohol and alcohol-related issues. And I leave that up to you to choose what's in your best interest.
Yes, sir. I'd be glad to. I just need a job. I was self-employed most of my life, so my Social Security is around $700 a month. I get $200 a month food stamps, and then my rent is $540 a month. So I just need a job, make some more money.
Mr. Beasley, I truly am empathetic and sympathetic to your situation of needing a job. One of the responsibilities this commission has is also protection of the public.
Right.
And I'm very concerned about giving a permit to someone who has 2 DUIs on their record. And candidly, I'm not sure you really appreciate the impact that alcohol and that your previous record with alcohol-related incidences has on giving a permit.
I don't have to drink at all. I can give up drinking. When I was married, I have 2 children. One lives in New York City. My daughter lives in Peru, South America. And their mother was an alcoholic. And so I just try to save the marriage because she went to AA. I went to AA for, a couple of years, and tried to save the marriage. And then her father didn't like me very much. He was chairman of the Commerce Union Bank. I didn't like him very much either, and so sort of broke up our marriage. But my lawyer told me to go to AA, so I've done that before. I can do it again.
Thank you, sir.
I have no problem with it.
I do have just an update for the commissioners. So 672-140A does say the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission or its staff shall, upon the consideration of the application and the reports and certificate required to be attached thereto, approve or reject the application.
I make a motion this time to reject Mr. Beasley's application for a permit to drive a cab.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Beasley. So you can appear and before us and make an application in 90 days for a taxi permit, Mr. Beasley. And as Mr. McNally suggested, I would encourage you to come back with, well, I wasn't going to say that, but being able to represent to us that you are no longer drinking and that as part of your application that you're willing to undergo drug screening and alcohol screening, and at that time we would probably reconsider whether or not to grant you a permit.
What month would that be? October. Around Christmas time, right?
It would be after the new year. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we've got wrecker and towing services items on the agenda. We've got a request for Margaret Martin, Michael Martin, and John Martin to be recognized as owners of Bailey's Martins and Mike's Custom Towing.
Martin's has been a record company in Nashville for many years. Mike's Custom Towing was added. Mr. Mike Martin passed away a few years back. Some of you would remember him as one of the long-time and stand-up folks that operated records in Nashville. When he passed, the company then, when his sons reached legal age, was to, through his will, would make it a family-owned business again. the request was made. Unfortunately, Miss Martin, Margaret Martin, has become ill and can't be here today. Both Michael and John are here, but Miss Martin asked that we wait until she is present to do that. I've spoken with them. They recognize that. Her name is on, and it would be appropriate to wait until the October meeting to consider it.
Do we need a motion?
Defer 1 month.
Yeah. Move to defer for 1 month.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We also been asked to review a non-consent towing application for Andres Towing LLC.
You will recall Mr. Rivers has been a wrecker operator on actually a couple of different companies over the years. He has held a non-consent towing permit once before, I believe, and meets the qualifications. His application is in front of you.
Mr. Fields, what are the implications of granting a non-consent?
Non-consent towing allows a company to remove a vehicle from private property without the owner of the vehicle's acknowledgement. It requires that a ticket be signed by the property owner or the property owner's representative prior to the vehicle being towed. When the car is towed, the police department through the central records has to be notified, and then there's additional processes that have to go to let the owner know where the vehicle is. It is very serious, and I counsel a lot with when they come in that there's probably when you're taking control of someone's property, it has to be done right every time with no mistakes.
And how many currently do we have no consent?
All of the emergency companies currently, and there are 14 of those. 15 of those, they all have the right to do non-consent towing by virtue of being emergency. There are, I was going to say, there are probably an additional, there are fewer than 10 other companies.
In his particular zone?
No, it's not a zone. This would be countywide. In other words, he would be eligible to do this. For instance, it would be a non-consent tow, for instance, if you have property in Germantown and someone were to park in the driveway behind your house or your business, you would have the right to call a company that's certified to do non-consent towing. You would sign the ticket. They would put the hook on it, contact the police department, and remove the vehicle. It's off your property. He is now responsible for that particular vehicle.
And there's also additional insurance required.
Correct. There are additional insurance. They basically carry the same kind of insurance totals that an emergency company would have to have. They have to have a secure lot. The lot has to have certain lighting. Has to be inspected. Has to be approved. Has to have the UNO permits and so forth.
And all this is in place?
Yes. We will do a final inspection of the lot pending the commission's approval, but we just do that as a final check off.
You're Andre Rivers.
Yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve Andres Towing for the non-consent towing application.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have 2 driver applications. The first is from Keith Kincaid for wrecker and towing services.
Mr. Kincaid? In making his application, Mr. Kincaid filed his application. He shared information with us. If you review it, in 2017 he was arrested for battery. It was dismissed, but the problem that we had was a BUI, boating under the influence. Boating under the influence is not a violation of our code, but it is an alcohol-related issue. We haven't had one in several years. We asked the commission just to approve. Again, it will not disqualify him, but the commission is very interested in the drivers, and I wanted to make sure this was in front of you. He did disclose it. There's not an issue of disclosure.
Did you catch anything?
No, I actually didn't plan on boating that day at all. I was at my brother's house. He has a lake house in Old Hickory Lake, and I've been on the road prior to applying for this position. I've been an over-the-road truck driver for 10 years and have done more than 1.3 million miles safely, legally, and accident-free. And at the time when I had the time off, my brother's like, come to my house, relax, have the weekend. And he was planning to have some people over. And my adult son was working and working late, and so I just sort of hung out there, my brother and his friends, and went out in the lake and came back. And my son showed up and went down and talked to my brother, and they said, we're going for a boat ride, Dad. And I said, okay. By that time, I've been swimming around in the pool and having a little bit of fun. I've been working for 90 days at that point in time. And so I jumped in the boat. My brother we went across the cove and jumped in the lake and swam around. And when I got back on the boat, I realized my brother was really intoxicated. And we had to anchor down. And I said, well, let's just sit here for a while. And then his wife started calling him. And I thought, I'm better than him. And my son, even though he's an adult, has never had any boating experience. So I came across the lake. And when we came out of the water, we forgot to lift the ladder, and my son caught it right away. We were up on plane, and so the reason why the boat officer came to us is because he thought we were underway with a passenger in the rear, because when we stopped to lift the ladder, the boat was still moving. And so the officer came over and he asked me if I had been drinking, and I said yes. I wasn't going to deny the fact or try to fight or run. I've always told to, if there is an issue, to be honest. If you did something wrong, to admit it. And after consultation with my attorney, he said the best thing to do would be to plead guilty. So I did. I was really apprehensive because I was an over-road truck driver. He assured me that in Tennessee it wouldn't affect my driving record. As you can see, I submitted a 10-year driving record, and I have had no moving violations, no accidents. My PSP record,
a long way to go without that.
my PSP record is perfect. I was an over-the-road trainer with Stevens Transport.
Did you take breath test?
No, I did not. The final adjudication was $250 fine.
Yeah.
And 6 months unsupervised probation. And I take the offense really very seriously. My whole entire driving career was main thing is to protect the motoring public, to do what I needed to do. And this is just a series of events that I couldn't call a cab on the lake, and I couldn't swim that far. Best bet would probably have been just to camp out there, but because of my brother and his wife, it was just unforeseen events. So, I just appreciate the opportunity to, primarily the reason why I did this is so I get off the road. And TowPro has a really good operation, and they're really safe. They have a safety conscious, and that's why I'm here today.
TowPro is a good company. I used it.
But if it was a DUI, we would not be having this discussion.
We would not be having the conversation. Potentially, what was the year?
It's 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, it would be within the 3-year period. Yeah. But again, it does not have there's no section that, it doesn't, the BUI doesn't appear in the ordinance.
Under the circumstances, I move to approve Mr. Kincaid's application for a permit.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Just come back to the office and.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a driver application for Randall Mooneyham.
Mr. Mooneyham was originally on the August agenda. He was unable to be there. He called and asked to have it deferred. He called again yesterday or today? Yesterday? I believe it was today. Today. He called today and said he had an emergency and was not going to be able to be present today either.
Is he still interested?
He is.
I make a motion to defer it one more month.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We have a driver application for low-speed vehicle for Alexander Tesiros.
Mr. Tesiros cannot be present today. He asked if he could have this deferred until the October meeting.
So moved.
First request?
I make a motion to move it to the October meeting.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We also have some items under other passenger vehicles for hire. We've been asked to review a request by Touch of Class to change its business address.
Anytime there's a request, as I explained earlier, anytime there's a request to the face of an application, the commission has to be presented to the commission. Everything is in order, and he's making the request to make the change.
Move to approve the change of address request for Touch of Class.
Second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We also have a driver application for an other passenger vehicle for hire by Philip Cotton Jr.
Mr. Cotton has made an application to be a driver for one of the other passenger vehicles for hire company. In our reviews of his background, he has had a history. He does not have anything that is currently that's pending or that would keep him from being a driver that I'm aware of. However, his application is, again, his background is lengthy. As I'm reviewing, as I'm just looking at it, it also appears that there was a reckless endangerment in 2009, and I'm just trying to make sure. I'm not seeing that he had actually shared that with us, unless I'm missing. Let me, 2000. But again, it's a lengthy application, and wanted him to appear in front of the commission.
Most of these controlled substance cases cocaine?
Yes, sir.
Is the last one in 99?
Yes, sir.
So
2000.
2000?
Yes, sir.
So what have you been doing the last 18 years to keep from being arrested for cocaine cases?
Well, I got out of the penitentiary in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
April 2008, and since May of 2008, I've been working for Franklin Motor Company in Nashville Limo and Transport. When I was at Nashville Limo and Transport, I had a record permit. Well, originally I applied for the record permit and it was denied, and I had to come in front of the board and they granted it to me. I let that permit expire because I no longer drive a record. So through another company of the same owner, I still work for him. I've been with him currently for 10 years now.
Okay, you got out in 2008 from prison.
A month later, I've been working for him ever since. Yes, sir.
Are you on parole now?
No, sir.
Did you flatten your sentence?
Yes, no, sir. I was on probation. I got out of probation in 2016.
So you got out in 2008 and did another 8 years on paper.
Yes, sir.
And then you flattened it in 2016.
Yes, sir.
Now we're on probation or parole?
Parole.
Parole. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you've been 2 years off of parole.
Yes, sir.
I'm here on behalf of the company. Mr. Cotton has been an exemplary employee for us for the last 10 years. Never had any problem. He's moved from he first started driving for us for Nashville Limo and Transport. He moved up into a managerial position. He has done things for our office that we can trust him with money, with anything else. He's never had any problems. He has a good home life. I would trust him with my grandchildren if I needed to. He is a wonderful, caring person, and I challenge anyone to have a better employee than we've had with him for the last 10 years.
you're with Nashville or
I
Nash
work for
Vegas
Franklin
Party
Motor
Bus?
Company.
Or Franklin
But
Motor
yes, sir, I'm also with Nash Vegas Party Bus. The same gentleman that owns those companies has started Nash Vegas Party Bus. And we wanted Philip to be a driver for the bus. And then we applied for our license, which we were granted last month. So
That's one of those buses that rides around downtown.
it's a
with people?
bachorette party
Yeah,
bus, yes,
okay.
sir.
You really want to drive one of those?
Got to make ends meet, sir.
Well, yeah, you do have to make ends meet.
The things
Is
that you were
there?
talking
Can
about.
you give me just one? Don't we have a period of time that you have to be off probation or parole?
You do if it's felony.
At least felony.
But he had a record permit until December of 17.
The record permit standards may be different.
They have changed there have been some changes to the record permit rules.
What are our rules regarding other passenger vehicles for the period of time off parole or probation?
Has been convicted, pleaded guilty, nolo contendere, placed on judicial diversion pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 4035-313, or has been released from incarceration, probation, or parole within a period of 7 years prior to the date of application for violation of any of the following criminal offenses under the laws of Tennessee or any state of the United States of America. And the last one is the felony possession, sale, or distribution of narcotic drugs or controlled substances.
So what I just heard was you have to be off parole for 7 years before you can be a qualified applicant?
I believe that's how it reads. I'm sorry.
Okay. So 7 years?
We're sure that's how it reads. Because
I'll
it's
read it
interesting
again.
that it says released or convicted, and then it also throws in there off of parole, because this gentleman's situation is he's convicted in 2000, he does 8 years. He's clearly been released for more than 7 years.
Would you like to see the? Sometimes it's easier to see something in writing.
Which one is it, E, F, or E?
I was looking at this.
Okay. Has been convicted, guilty, placed on judicial. All right, so that's a conviction. Or been released from incarceration, probation, or parole within a period of 7 years prior to the date of application. Yeah, that's how it reads.
Say and or. And?
Or been released from incarceration, probation, or parole within a period of 7 years prior to the date of the application for a violation of these offenses. And
So
this
could
is
it be any one, or does it have to be all?
any one
Of the offenses?
of the any one of those conditions.
Not just been released. It has to be and off of parole.
Or off of parole.
If they
If it
they
had just
have
been released, he'd be fine. It's the
Okay.
parole within the last 2 years that's the
7 years.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Cotton.
Thank you.
Hang in there, though.
And I'm sorry that I missed that.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry.
you. So I do think we need to make a motion regarding Mr. Cotton's application, though.
Under the circumstances that he has only been off of parole for 2 years, I make a motion to deny Mr. Cotton's application for a other passenger vehicle for hire.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have a driver application for Rhonda Grunman.
In making your application, Ms. Grunman neglected to list a $2,000 worthless check charge.
What was the outcome of the worthless check allegation?
I don't remember.
Okay.
So you don't remember if you went to court or if it was dismissed?
It had to be dismissed because I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember. It was 18 years ago. That's why I failed to put it on there. I did not remember.
I noticed you listed only one speeding ticket, so.
I remember that because it was pouring down rain and I was going to work.
I just note, in looking at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's criminal history record, it does not indicate any disposition. So there's a good chance it probably was dismissed. I make a motion to approve Ms. Grunman's application.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And under other business, I see we've got we've been asked to review a request to change the LSV ordinance from Mr. Winters.
Mr. Winters made actually two requests. One that would, both would require Metro Council action. One that would deal with insurance issues in the off-season. The other would be the consideration of medium-speed vehicles in addition to low-speed vehicle licensing. Both would require Metro Council action. He asked to speak very briefly to the commission to explain why he would like that to be considered at the next opportunity by the commission.
Here are my two thoughts. In the winter, as we sneak up on it, we don't use as many vehicles, low-speed vehicles, as we do during our prime season. As soon as we step into spring, we don't use as many vehicles until May, June, what have you, once it starts getting warm. During the off-season, like many companies like ours, those vehicles are sitting in storage in a garage, at another lot, what have you. Very candidly, I would like to suspend the insurance on those vehicles. Here's why. We'll spend thousands of dollars in insurance for those vehicles to sit in a garage somewhere. I'd much rather buy tires, new canopies, new roofs, new seat belts. I'd rather allocate that money to something useful, very candidly, than insurance. And if we have an event where, and this is a kind of a secondary, but if we have an event where somebody says, I want 2 of your carts for a subdivision showing for 2 months out wherever, if they're not in Davidson County, secondarily, would it be nice to not insure those for Davidson County rules because they're sitting in a subdivision for 2 months? All I'm saying is I'd like to look at a couple of options there. To give you a little math on that, each vehicle is $300 to $400 a month in insurance. 10 vehicles is $4,000. So if I've got a handful of vehicles sitting in a garage for 3 months, that's $10,000 or $12,000. For $10,000 or $12,000, I could buy a new vehicle. I could buy dozens of tires. So my intention is to simply reallocate resources. The secondary one is the medium speed vehicles, which correlates to the traffic study. Traffic study's number one complaint was speed differential on low speed vehicles as compared to cars and what have you. A medium speed vehicle has the right to be on roads that are 10 mile an hour faster, as well as the vehicles are allowed to go 10 miles an hour faster. The medium speed vehicle would also be a different vehicle. When you look at low-speed vehicles that we operate today, we have to modify them to get everything to work correctly, meaning they don't come with three-point seat belts unless you install them. They don't come with heavy-duty leaf springs unless you install them. Medium-speed vehicles come with those things. They come with disc brakes, bigger shocks, three-point seat belts, heavier frames, very candid, larger motors. You got a 40-horsepower motor instead of a 14-horsepower motor. In the low-speed vehicle world, we spend a lot of money and time trying to keep those vehicles going and modifying them to carry the people around town. A medium-speed vehicle would provide you with a better vehicle and very candidly a safer vehicle according to the traffic study and just according to wear and tear and parts and that kind of stuff, period. So if you got questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But that's my reasoning for both recommendations. And side note, technically, I think I could operate a medium-speed vehicle today without any guidance from you guys because it's not regulated by the city of Nashville. So I'm asking this before it actually would be used, I guess, in theory.
I think it would meet the definition of an other passenger vehicle.
Correct, under other passenger, yes. But it wouldn't fall under low speed or something like that. But because it fits under 21 passengers, it would fall into other vehicles for use. Yes, that part. I think based on the traffic study, the medium-speed vehicles make a lot of sense, personally.
So are we just being asked to put this on the next agenda?
I'm not sure exactly what he's asking. From a procedural standpoint, what happens, we're regularly as a staff and legal advisors, we're looking for things that may or may need to be changed there. And when we do, what we typically do is come to the commission and say we believe these are things that merit recommendation to the council. When the companies share information with us, what we do is we sort of, we put it in the pot and we cook it, and as a staff, and then typically come back to the commission. We already have several things within the ordinances that, not just this, but several of the ordinances that we're looking at, we're come back for recommendations to you that we would then ask you recommend to the Metro Council. For instance, horse and carriages that you've heard from many times. There are several issues that you've actually taken action on that need to be taken to the commission or to the council. However, we typically do it as a package rather than one at a time. So this would fit within other recommendations. So if you said you'd like to see recommendations on low-speed vehicles in the next 3 months or 2 months or 5 months or 1 month, what we would do then is go back, look at everything we've got, come back with a package, and go from there.
This would be medium speed or other vehicles.
What it would require, the ordinance specifically talks about low-speed vehicles and defines low-speed vehicles. There is not a definition for a medium-speed vehicle. Well, one of the things, and I'm not the lawyer here, and I speak for it too often probably, but...
And I say medium-speed vehicle because that's how the state of Tennessee recognizes it.
Yeah, I know that there is a medium-speed vehicle definition in the Tennessee Code annotated. I think it's in the same section where the low-speed vehicle definition. So yeah, I think that's basically correct. I mean, I think that this would basically be, as Billy said, council action. You'd need to get council to basically adopt a new chapter regulating medium-speed vehicles and or add them to an existing chapter, like make the low-speed vehicle chapter both. And so that would be just a recommendation that you would make to them. They could certainly take action without your recommendation. There's no mandatory referrals to this commission. So I think he's maybe just asking for your recommendation to the council.
Well, part of it's we're looking at the traffic study, and if you look at a medium-speed vehicle, it fixes a lot of the problems. I'm saying give the same restrictions on streets. Don't open those up, even though technically per state law they would be open. Put the same restrictions, same streets, same times, all the same stuff. Allow the vehicle change if you so choose to make it as a company.
I mean, I think you could operate a medium-speed vehicle on the streets. I'm not sure you could do it for hire without being in violation of 674.
Because of the other passengers, correct?
Right.
So what I'm saying is take the low-speed vehicle and say and or. Low speed, medium speed. All the other rules apply.
And it would be a package that would, for instance, it'd be Chapter 6.73 says low-speed vehicles. It may be, we would ask them to amend 6.73 to say low-speed and medium-speed vehicles.
And the only thing it's going to be, it would be adding that into the title of the caption, and then adding these heavier duty vehicles on the street.
It would, correct.
Or they could remove one of their low speed vehicles and put a medium speed.
I'm not looking
vehicle.
for new permits, new licenses. Same stuff I've already got. Here's why.
You just might want to replace some of your low speed vehicles with a medium speed vehicle because it will last longer.
An example,
hold
Polaris
up better.
Ranger that you use on a farm. That's a medium speed vehicle. They carry more weight. They
I
have
think
bigger
what Mr.
shock
Fields is
springs.
saying at this time is that all we can basically do for you is make a recommendation.
Totally get it. I'm just saying that as you look at the traffic study, I think
we should ask
having a better vehicle is a good choice. And it fixes a lot of, like the KBV bridge, you don't have to change the speed limit or even talk about it because federally you're allowed on the bridge. It just changes the game a little bit and gives you a better vehicle. And less broke down vehicles is less safety issues in general. And I can tell you from operating low-speed vehicles, we have to tune them down. If I run at 25, I blow motors. I got to run at 22 because I got a 14 horsepower motor. Give me a 40 horsepower motor, I can run 25 all day long, much safer. It's just a better vehicle.
And again, just because what would happen is if you ask us to put this in as a part of any other changes that we may have, you would then have a public hearing on it. We would take testimony from the public. You would hear everything to be said. We'd talk to the police. We would ask them to bring in information from mechanics, from the industries and so forth, show us what these vehicles look like and so forth, and then you would be able to then make a decision one way or the other. And you don't have to do anything. That's the other side. You could say, thank you.
And then the other part, obviously, was the insurance. And that is a financial decision because we can then use that money to vehicles, tires, whatever. It just, honestly, it doesn't make sense to insure garaged vehicles.
Mr. Fields, does the ordinance require them to keep insurance on vehicles that are not in use?
I think it's gray. It doesn't say you do or don't. I have to keep an insurance carrier, but could I drop half my vehicles? I think I probably could.
And I only say that because I operate, my seasons go like yours, and we don't, I'm in a different class, but I'm just wondering.
I figured I'd ask
why
versus asking for forgiveness.
There you go. And I'm trying to clarify that for you as well as myself.
It wasn't real clear.
Is the ordinance require him to keep?
There is an ambiguity there. It says the operation of any LSV within the metropolitan area without having enforced the public liability insurance policy as outlined in this section is hereby declared to be a violation of this article, subjecting the owner and or certificate holder to all applicable penalties provided in this article and in this chapter. So if he is not operating them, it's arguable he doesn't run afoul of that provision, but it also says here are the minimum insurance levels, period. I don't know the answer to your question, Commissioner. I would propose to maybe run this question past our Metro Director of Insurance, who's sort of my expert that I go to with all.
Half of me
insurance
said don't even mention it because it's gray. But forgiveness is not a good thing at this stage.
I would get clarification if I were you. I wouldn't see how, personally, my opinion in dealing with insurance with vehicles that I don't operate in the off season, if they're not on the road and they're not being used.
We actually put wheel chocks on them so you can't move them, so a driver can't take the wrong one.
I wouldn't see how, if something's not being used or not visible, we would even be regulating it if you're not using it.
It was just gray, so I figured I'd ask.
I think part of the issue that we have, and we'll also do the research on it, anytime you issue a certificate of public convenience and necessities for a specific number, the question then can become, if it's not, for instance, taxi cabs it's very clear in taxi cab, if there's certain things that aren't done, if it comes out of insurance, so what we want to, then it becomes an invalid, and they actually lose it. Mm-hmm. So their numbers, and what we don't want to do is what I'd be concerned about is we take an action that has a consequence that we weren't anticipating he would lose it automatically. So what we'll do is do the research with legal.
Oh, I'm not implying any action. I just was trying to get some clarification for him.
Because it's not crystal clear in the ordinance, and the ordinance it leaves room basically for you all to rule make in this area. I mean, I don't know if there would be policy concerns about there being a greater likelihood of vehicles getting back into operation without insurance coverage. If you all would want to set some administrative hurdle in place to try to prevent that from happening, but make this otherwise possible.
Well, and my thought process is email Billy and say these serial numbers, these VIN numbers, whatever, these permits are garaged. And I probably wouldn't make the request unless it was more than 15 days, so I wouldn't turn them on and off every week and annoy him. But if it's not more than 15 days, I simply send an email, say these are garaged, and I have to notify them when I'm ungaraging them. I think we have to have some responsibility and accountability to do the right things as well. And very candidly, from a business owner standpoint, and from what I've seen of this commission, it probably wouldn't be a smart idea to run a vehicle with no insurance, because that'd be the last day we'd be in operation, because you've got to just shut us down. So it wouldn't make sense to try to squeak a nickel and not have an insured vehicle on the road.
Especially if you came before us and say that you already knew better.
Bingo.
I'm surprised we don't require insurance on the issuing of the permit.
We do.
So that answers the question. They've got to have insurance on any permit that's issued, regardless of whether it's operating or not.
But it does have that specific provision in there just saying the operation of an LSV within the metropolitan area without having enforced the required insurance policy is the violation.
Yeah, what I'm saying is when we choose to issue a permit, I'm surprised it doesn't say that they have to have insurance to get the permit.
At the original issuance and at the annual renewal, the insurance must be in place.
Right. And we have to have proof by vehicle that everyone's insured.
Or technically it actually says, before any certificate shall be issued, the applicant shall be required to file a certificate of insurance with the MTLC director.
So if they cancel their insurance because they're dry docking the vehicle, then it would seem their permit goes into an invalid state.
But in theory, we're not canceling insurance as a policy. We're simply taking some vehicles off.
But you don't have an insurance policy on that particular vehicle.
And
which is what that
that's what we'd like to go through just to make sure before.
Yeah.
But the policy limit doesn't change. The $1 million.
Everything changes. I mean, everything stays the same. I can just say take 9 and 10 off, and my insurance company would, and they'd do it without question.
So each vehicle is insured individually.
It's one policy with 10 riders,
Correct.
Basically. So I can take the riders on and off, just no different than you do. You can remove 5 vehicles if you so choose. It doesn't change your policy, other than the
As long
premium.
as he has the $1 million in place on the policy, though. I don't know. This may be something that we need to take up offline.
I mean, my concern, your concern would be somebody taking advantage of that
Right.
system, and I get that. But they're also risking their entire business, which I think would be a pretty dumb idea.
We can certainly do some research and have
And the issue would be also that the provision would then apply to all of the other low-speed vehicle companies, not, so you can assure us that you would engage in good behavior, but if it applies to everybody, maybe we don't have that.
Correct, and I would tell you, I've talked to Chris Sizemore, I talked to other companies that operate these kind of vehicles, low speed, whatever, and we all garage vehicles in the winter. So, all of us would like this rule change in general, whether it be a pedal bar or a low speed vehicle.
All right, well, thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Winters.
guys. Appreciate your time.
Also, we've been asked to review some proposed meetings for, or scheduling of meetings for next year, 2019.
The world being the world, I always like to get you your calendar as early as I can. Last year, I think we did it at the September meeting, could have been the October meeting. For the most part, all the days are going to be the 4th Thursday of the month, again at 1:30. I didn't specifically put 1:30 on the meeting, but it would be at 1:30. It also shows the deadlines for all of the filing deadlines. We would alter the meeting in November to be 1 week prior to Thanksgiving. The one in December would actually be 2 weeks before Christmas. But we propose it's, again, the same schedule you've had for the last several years. It also gives the commission an opportunity, if you have built-in problems right now, to make changes.
The Aegean Islands, yeah. Florence. Are we supposed? Do we need a motion to approve it?
Yes.
I move to approve.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.